Welcome to The Executive Appeal, the show for CEOs of early 8-figure companies who feel like the business only moves when they push. If you're running a $10 to $25 million company and every big decision still rolls up to you, your leaders are smart but misaligned, trust is thinner than you'd like, and you're tired of being the hero that keeps everything moving, this is the room for you. I'm your host, Alex D. Tremble, CEO of GPS Leadership Solutions. I help CEOs see exactly where their own leadership is bottlenecking speed and trust, and then install one clear leadership operating system so their executives take real ownership and the business can run fast without them in every fire. Each episode of this podcast has 2 parts. First, we spotlight the guest, their story, what they built, how they think about leading their people. Then we get honest about what's still hard at the top, where things slow down, where trust and ownership break down, and what they're doing to fix it. No theory, just what actually worked in the room when the cameras were off. Now, let's meet today's guest. Hey, what's going on, my good friend Suzanne?
I'm good. How are you?
You and I were discussing before we got started, I am bunkering down. We have a tornado warning out here in Woodbridge, Virginia. So everyone cross your fingers. So I'll start us off like this. So I'm initially from California, Victorville, California. So they call it Desert Reds. And I did school. My undergrad was in Iowa. And so, while I was very, very used to mudslides and fires and earthquakes, like those things were like that's a normal Tuesday. When I went to Iowa, I was in my first tornado, and I was blown away because they all like had tornado parties. Like they all went to the basements, got beers and stuff, and everyone just partied. So I'd love to hear. Have you? You are the amazing CEO at the Rural Community Assistance Corporation. That means you've been out there in. I don't want to call it the world. I'm so tempted to say like the real world, but like those experiences, again, me jump, everyone having tornado parties during a tornado. Like, what has been your world? What has been your experience in that world?
Into the tornado world?
Into the rural world.
The rural world. So I was born and raised in rural northwest New Mexico. Started my life as a just a ranch kid. My grandparents had a ranching and farming operation. My mom and stepfather bought a trading post, and we moved to the trading post. I was in kindergarten at what I didn't realize was a Indigenous school that was a boarding school. And so very early on, learned how to integrate and assimilate and have a really diverse set of friends. And along the way, I was in 4-H. I rodeoed. My dad was a rodeo stock contractor. I was all over the reservation, all over every place rural. Every place rural has a rodeo, right? And ended up in rural Southeast Colorado on a ranch with a lot of children. I adopted along the way as well as inherited, so to speak, and had an opportunity to apply for a position that had health insurance, which was really important to me for my family in a small rural town serving 3 rural counties. And so I took a leap of faith, and I was lucky to be selected for the position, which ended up really opening up my eyes and my world. And as I always say, I realized at some point early on that I found my jam, that I really loved being a bridge, if you will, to resources for rural communities by leveraging the things that weren't working to bring resources into communities that do work. So that's my rural background and how I ended up in rural community and economic development.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I I have a very serious question, and I have a question I'm actually super interested in. Did you also say that you were in rodeos, or did you go to rodeos?
Oh no, I still am.
Goodness gracious, that's so freaking
Yes.
cool.
My husband and I have children who do that professionally. That's what they do for a living. We have children who do that and grandchildren who do that for the fun of it. I just competed on Saturday. So it's in our culture, it's in our DNA, if you will, um, for generations actually.
Okay, so again, I know there's an important question I want to ask, but I do have to ask now this follow up. What is it about the rodeo that you think most people don't understand or would be surprised to learn?
I think it's a lifestyle and a community in itself. Um, like, we were at dinner last night with some friends, and the ties that connect, it's a really small world. Like, I have a really good friend that I didn't know was related to another really good friend. And so part of it is it becomes your community because you're with them every weekend. Like when I was a kid, my best friends were the folks I was with on the weekends, and their parents became friends with my parents, etc. And so I think it's a community that folks don't think about. It's not just something we do; it's also something we are. It's generational, much like a lot of things in communities. It's also a lifestyle. So it's not. I often laugh at myself because it's not something that I just do on the side. It's something. It's a goal. It's the means help me reach that end at the end of the week or at the end of a day. It's also riding horses for me has always been a really great stress reliever. My husband would say it's because I ride crazy horses, so I can't think about anything but staying alive. But I disagree with him strongly. There's just something about like many people with dogs, four-legged creatures are such a mental and emotional safe space, and I feel that way with horses as well.
I I have to say, um, I'm not agreeing with your husband. I am underscoring a point your husband's making for other people. I was giving leading a workshop for some execs just a couple weeks ago, and we are talking about the like how do you operate at a higher level, um, and when you're operating at the higher level, you have to be one of the most important things you can do is have the ability to slow down, to not react to every stimulus that comes your way, right? And the question was like, how do you do that? So I like the idea of telling people, hey, look, meditation is really great. Like, it can help you slow down, understand your thinking, and so on and so forth. But I told them, like, meditation is not just sitting down with your legs crossed.
Right.
For me, meditation was for a long time hiking and doing rock scrambles, because to your husband's point is like, in order for me to not fall and slip, I have to focus on the now. I have to, is my foot here, my hand here, so on and so forth. And it allowed me to just to get away from the work and get away from the everything else and just focus on the now, which helped me kind of get center myself. Um, I know you say, you have a personal, just the relationship piece with the four-leg animal. Would you also like just, I mean, do you also feel that it is kind of almost meditation like? Because you have to focus on the now versus, huh, I wonder if that report got sent off and I like join.
Well, I think especially with horses, like you're on their back, like they are feeling your tension. So if something happens, then I think one of the first things you think about is did I create that? What did I do to help create that? How do I fix that? Like, am I being, can they feel this stress? Can they tell that I'm upset? So there's this, it's a relationship.
Yeah.
And, just like most relationships, you can pull this string and this happens over here, right? Because that's how we all have our own triggers,
Yeah.
things that we're going to react to. And I think that's one of the things that I love about being on a horse is it takes me outside of what's going on inside my brain that just is circular sometimes. I don't know what to do about this. And then you think about it again, and you come back to it. I still don't know what to do. It really is about how I can take what's happening while I'm riding and what do I own of that?
Yeah.
And how do I strategize to get my horse to do what I want? What are all the tools I have in my toolbox of a lifelong of riding that I can bring? Because every horse is different, just like every situation we deal with in work is different. There are different dynamics. We went to a barrel race last weekend. The wind was blowing like crazy. Thought I was back in New Mexico. I have one horse that really negatively reacted to that, right? And so it was more about, okay, I know what I know about how to manage him, but I don't know that I know what I know how to manage him in this situation.
Yeah.
So having to step back and say, okay, I need to understand this and how can I best support him be the best version of himself? Does that sound familiar?
We're about to make that. We're about to do it.
Yeah. And how do I adapt? And I think much like leadership, rodeoing, being on a horse, from just riding a horse down a trail to being in the arena at the national finals, I think everyone would tell you, you have to adapt to the situation. You have to adapt. If you ride more than one horse, they are all different.
Yeah.
So you have to adapt to that. You have to adapt to the conditions. What's the ground like? What's the venue like? All of that. And so there's some real alignment that I don't think I ever recognized or appreciated until probably the last 4 or 5 years, because I took some time off from riding, and my kids rode, and I was working, and there were all these things. But when I came back to it, the blessing of being able to come back to it also really elevated why it was a missing part of my DNA that I really missed, and that I was a better person having access to that resource for me.
So why? I mean, I hear the passion that you talk about when you're talking about your writing and your family and the community. Why be the CEO of a relatively influential organization, especially for the community that it serves? Like, why that? I am 100% sure that it's not just a cakewalk. Like, it's not just you texting someone every once in a while. What is it about being the CEO of this company that makes you go to work every day?
So there's a phrase that is probably my tagline, and it is "rural is my culture." I came up with that phrase, and I think it was already in my DNA, but I was pressed to articulate why would someone care about rural America? And it was by Michael Rubinger, who was a longtime CEO and president at Local Initiative Support Corporation, LISC. And I was fortunate enough to have a long history with Rural LISC. I was one of the original grantees, the organization that I founded. I then was on their advisory committee. Then I did their lending for the rural space. And then I was fortunate to lead the national rural team. And Michael Rubinger told me when I first started, we needed to raise money, and we really needed to jumpstart rural Lisk. It was more of a point in time than any individual. It was a rough period of time. It was after the housing crisis.
Yeah.
And he told me, he says, you have 2 minutes to make, I'm going to say a curmudgeon. That's not the term he used, but a curmudgeon like me sitting in downtown Manhattan, New York City, care about rural. You have 2 minutes to capture my pocketbook, right? And so the first time I waxed poetically, probably as I did in this introduction, about why rural was so important to me and, all of the things. And he said, like, yeah, well, you might have my heart, but you don't have my money. So the next time I talked about the business case and how we're codependent between urban and rural, with where food, fiber, and fun happen, right, is in rural America. You don't go boating in urban spaces, all the things. He's like, the logic gets me, but my heart doesn't. And so I was really getting frustrated because I like to think I'm very convincing when I want to be, and I wasn't having any luck. And so I was talking to someone, and of course, the Indigenous community has always been an important part of my life, and also a goal in my work life to have an impact. And they were talking about culture, and we were talking about how different cultures approach things and how culture is something that shouldn't be questionable. And I realized that, wait, rural is my culture. Usually when I say I work in rural or I live in rural, because the first time I haven't lived in rural was when I took this position. That's a whole nother hilarious story. But I went in to see Michael. He was my supervisor. And I was having a check-in with him, and I said, I've got it. And he goes, okay, what is it? And I said, rural is my culture. And he looked at me and he said, what do you mean? And I said, I've got you. You didn't ask a dumb question like, well, where do you shop? Well, why would you live there? You didn't ask, you asked a curious question. And that curiosity is what built a great relationship with Michael and I, and built a really strong program at Lisk, because no one questions your culture. If they want to engage, they're curious about your culture. And so I feel like that has really been, I've always been rural. I've always been incredibly grateful for the blessings of being raised that country girl, of all of the adventures, the experiences, good, bad, and ugly, of being a rural girl. But there's so many things that you learn. Like if you have animals in a pen and you don't go outside in that impending tornado, and take care of them, it is your responsibility. So there's a zillion things that being a rural kid. 4-H teaches you to get up and speak in front of people. 4-H teaches you about deadlines. It teaches you a lot of things. FFA as well. There are so many rural supports that build towards building solid individuals. Not that there aren't urban. This isn't a contest. We need all of us in that space to be successful. But I feel like rural is something that's often overlooked or categorized in a certain way. And so when you talk about it as culture, it's a whole different conversation.
I really love what you said. Gotcha. I want to dive into, I actually want to really dive into this. But before we switch gears, would you share what's the proudest moment you've had as the CEO of this company, and or like, what is the thing that this company has accomplished that you were like, this is amazing?
Wow, those are kind of two different questions. I would say the proudest moment, and there was the two proudest moments, because they're combined, they're codependent, interactive, was when we received our Mackenzie Scott gifts. There is something about being part of a legacy organization that puts community first, that is a bridge to resources, that elevates community capacity. All of those are such wonderful things. But to have it acknowledged in such a public way, not just our organization, but the communities that we serve and that we work in, was a really proud moment, because I'm the third CEO. The two previous CEOs were mentors, and I watched them as they built this organization and it evolved. I work with the folks who are in community. They are not just in community, they live in community.
Yeah.
And to just have that recognition for them that, hey, somebody gets it. They see you, they see us, they see our rural and Indigenous communities. They see the challenges, which most people do see the challenges, but they also see the opportunity, which not everybody sees the opportunity in a rural and Indigenous community. And I love that was acknowledged in such a public and in such a catalyzing way, right? It wasn't just, oh, we're going to give you this gold star. It was like, we're going to give you resources to continue and build on what you're already doing. That was one of the proudest moments. The other thing I would say is that I become grouchy when I don't go to community, when I'm out of community for a bit, because we're a big organization. There's a lot of corporate site type stuff that I deal with. For a country girl, that's a lot. But when I go into community, it's like it just fills my cup. You know, the saying that if your cup's empty, you can't fill anybody else's cup. Every time I go into community, particularly with the folks who work in that community, our people, the RCAC people, and I watch the relationships they built, the trust they built, the just never say never attitude that they take to community, I just get re-energized. I just get recatalyzed. It's just like, we can do this. We're gonna do this, regardless of the headwinds. And there are always headwinds. But that, I think, is really like the proudest moments, but also what's really critical about what RCAC does. It's not just what we do, it's how we do it. It's how we show up for each other. It's how we show up in community.
Love it. Quick question. Do you have a great team, but it still feels like you're doing all the thinking and things aren't moving as fast as they could? I built a free 10-minute executive leadership diagnostic to show you exactly where trust, proactivity, and productivity are leaking on your team and what to focus on this quarter. If you're watching, scan the QR code on your screen now. If you're listening, go to gpsleadership.org/diagnostic. You'll also find the link in the episode description. Now, back to today's episode. So you've shared your passion for the community. You shared your passion about rural. You've shared your passion about the work, not just the work you do, but how you go about doing. I'd love to understand, what do you still find hard about being the CEO?
It's really a lonely place. It's hard because you, just much like we bridge in community resources, etc., you're bridging a very diverse workforce. You're bridging a very diverse world. You are making decisions that can have unintended consequences. You are you are not just making Suzanne decisions. You are making RCAC decisions, and how your personal feelings on things may land. Sometimes you have to compromise those because you are making decisions for the betterment of the whole universe, of staff, communities, community members, and so that ecosystem is not monolithic. So for someone who likes a triple, quadruple bottom line win, I don't always get that.
Yeah.
And that's been probably one of the hardest things for me to manage. And I wouldn't say I have it fully managed. I still wake up in the night feeling like I wish I could have figured out how to make that a better outcome for more folks, or a different outcome for folks who who it just didn't, I didn't get the check mark from, if you will. So I think that's one of the hardest things for me. I think it also, that work-life balance has been hard for me to achieve. I think I'm much better at it than I used to be. I think when you're in that, before you're the CEO, or even when you're a new CEO, you feel like you have to be the end all be all. Um, and I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned, sorry if I'm jumping ahead, but is if you surround yourself with folks who have complementary skill sets, and not all cookie cutters, you also have diverse perspectives, and that you genuinely like each other, you 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 get to a point where the agree to disagree can be pleasant.
Yeah.
And we just did this competency scan of our C-suite, and not only did we do the scan of what should be on the C-suite, we actually assigned who do we think on our C-suite has the competencies that should be in RCAC's C-suite. And then we realized maybe some things that were missing that we wished we had. We also realized that there were certain attributes or skills that only one of us owned. And so the positive takeaway was that, wow, we almost have everything covered. The other takeaway was, if one of us leaves, we have a huge gap to fill. And we have a couple of things we'd like to have. So as we hire this new C-suite, Chief Lending and Investment Officer, we need to make sure they have that.
Yeah.
And so I think that is something that is really critical, is not just it being as a CEO, but as it being like, who is in your leadership team? Like, how does that all play out as you make decisions? And agreeing on, these are the competencies that we need here. So, I think it is a lonely place, but it's also a place that you can build a really strong team. But you have to have some honest conversations with yourself and with them.
You've just said so much right now. So many different ways and directions we can go from here. I want to start with one of the first pieces you brought up, which was you're making decisions not necessarily based on yourself, but what's best for the universe, which is all the stakeholders, the customers, the staff, the people who don't even know they're being impacted by this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a level of maturity you have to have that not everyone has, to say, hey, look, I know this is not what I want. This is not what I even think is best necessarily, but I do think it's what's best for this situation, or best for this organization, or best for, because you're not necessarily, and maybe not all CEOs think about it like this, but Many CEOs see the organization as I'm a caretaker. Like it's supposed to go past me. So how do I make sure I'm setting it up for success in the future, even if I'm not here? Is that how you look at it as well? Like you're almost like a caretaker, or is it like this is mine?
No, I feel like I'm a steward.
Yeah,
I think it's
steward.
more of
Yeah,
a
yeah.
stewardship for me, because to whom much is given, much is expected, right? And
Mhm.
so I am in this space, but I also have to understand that we have a very diverse workforce. We're in 13 Western states.
Yeah.
Rural is not monolithic. Indigenous communities are not monolithic. And so, and we have values. We have organizational values. Sometimes those are really clean cut, what's right and what's wrong. And sometimes there's gray.
Mhm.
And the gray is the hardest. Um, the gray is the hardest. And so I do think that I'm certainly not, this is my organization. I own my role. And I think that's important. And you said something about maturity, and this is a term I came up with. I don't even know if anybody else uses it, but it's a goal for me in folks, with folks that I that my direct reports, as well as leadership as a whole, is professional maturity is not something you're born with. It's not
Mhm.
something that you get um, by just going to school or what. Professional maturity is the school of hard knocks, honing you
Yeah.
to know what that looks like. Professional maturity is knowing when to end a conversation and recalibrate and pick it up later. Professional maturity is when knowing how to say, I know that you disagree. Unfortunately, we're going to have to agree to disagree here. Um, and then I think it's also something that you aspire, not just for yourself, but for your leadership team. Because you can be the smartest, you can be the best equipped, you can be all the things, accomplishments, the whole thing, right? But it's like the tea bag. When you get into hot water, you figure out who you really are. I had been at RCAC 4 months when COVID hit big
Mhm.
time with we got to shut down. Um, I didn't do everything right, but we turned that what could have been a really negative thing into a real positive.
Yeah.
And that was instinctual. I'm sorry, I probably should say it was intellectual, but it was instinctual, right? Like the best defense is a good offense.
Mhm.
I'm the CEO, brand new CEO of this amazing organization, and we have a worldwide pandemic. What are funders going to think? They're going to think, oh my gosh, this girl has never run this big of an organization. She's brand new. What is going to happen? So, best defense is a good offense. Get all of our funders on the phone.
Mhm.
We're going to talk to them about what we are doing and how we are
Yeah.
pivoting, because that's such a COVID word, to the moment, right? And so I think that professional maturity isn't something that you can take classes on. I think part of it is that the school of hard knocks and how you learn to you learn to respond, and how you kind of look in your toolbox and figure out what tools do I have. And that leads to how we have approached a lot of things at RCAC is with strategic optimism. And it's this phrase that is like, don't meet trouble halfway. When the landscape starts changing, don't meet trouble halfway. What the strategic part of it is, what can we impact? Right? Going back to the pandemic, what can we impact? We can impact how people are looking at us, right?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
can impact that. And strategically, we can impact that. Optimism is not Pollyanna. Optimism is, I'm going to do all I can to effect a positive impact, the most positive impact I can. That doesn't mean I'm going to take down, the world to make it happen. But for example, should I wait for the funders to call me? That would be like just waiting.
Mm-hmm.
But the
Mm-hmm.
strategic was, oh no, I want to talk to them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because before they formed an opinion, before
Mm-hmm.
they get too far down the road of where they think RCAC is going. Secondly, I'm going to have a couple of ideas in my pocket that not only show them that we're not going to sit and let this happen to us,
Yeah.
but that we are going to provide resources that can adapt to this moment. And secondly, they can invest in them because I'm telling them about them first. So that's kind of the strategic optimism.
Yeah.
When the administrations changed, and a couple of our programs immediately were held up, and people were panicking internally. And I kept saying, don't meet trouble halfway. Don't meet trouble halfway. If you do, you're going to drag it back, or you're going to waste all this time that you could be working on things that we have control over.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's going to be a court case. Maybe there's going to be this. Maybe there's going to be that. But let's just keep our eye on the prize, which is what can we triage for communities right now? What do we have? What opportunities? And lo and behold, some of those circled right back to us as opportunities. But if we had cut staff, aka capacity,
Mm-hmm.
if we had not focused on what we could work on, where would we have been? We would
Mm-hmm.
have been, where would our communities have been, is really the question. They would have been reeling versus us triaging for them and keeping the pathway moving forward, keeping capacity in house so that we could then redeploy immediately as soon as the resources came back to us. So I think there's a lot in that, but I really think it's about that strategic optimism, not being Pollyanna in any way, but making sure you take care of what you can control. Because if you take your eye off that prize, then you're losing what you can't control and what you can control.
Well, you dropping so many truth bombs over here. I think that is the thinking of successful, proactive CEOs. Um, literally, I was talking to one of my coaching clients last Friday, and we were talking about a really important meeting he was having with the principal executive, and we're gonna he was kind of strategizing it, and I always ask, so what do you think about doing? And they laid it out, and I was like, okay, cool, 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 great. Yeah, don't do that. Because the idea was to walk in there and see what that person wanted to do in response to a situation that was happening. I was like, don't do that. No, no, no. Like you said, you go in there with a plan. Hey, I've done my homework. These are the plans I have. These are the resources required. I can do A, B, and C. Is this in alignment with your goals? I mean, I think it's in alignment with your goals. Because like you said, it shows them that you've been thinking about this. You're proactive, and you're kind of taking the bull by the horns versus being shy and reserved, and you're not sure how things are going to happen. I always tell people, like, if you don't believe in you, why would anyone else believe in you? And more importantly, not even if you don't believe in you, um, it's if you don't look like you believe in you, then why would anyone else believe in you? Because no one can see inside of your brain. So sometimes you just got to fake it. You got to be in
Make
there.
it
And
and make it. Yep.
yes, I'll tell myself sometimes, like, what would this person do in this situation? Cool. I'm just gonna act like that person, and that's how it goes sometimes. I know time has been going by so fast. So I know we're about to wrap up. What is it like you'd like to share with our audience as we begin to wrap up our time together?
I think authenticity is really key. To your point, like, yes, I had a solution, strategic optimism, but I also admitted candidly to snot slinging crying for hours trying to figure out what to do. And I think the authenticity that I am a real person. I said when I first came on board that I would work really, really hard. That was my first promise. My second promise was I would make mistakes. My third promise would be that I would figure out how to fix them.
Yeah.
And that I wouldn't make mistakes without just an honest effort of trying to do more and to do better within our communities and our RCAC. And I just think authenticity, but you have to have strength. You cannot, as you said, go in without that strength. You can change your mind easily, but you can't show up without confidence, because folks were spiraling at RCAC, and one of the my grandma used to always say the proof's in the pudding. One of the things that really, really hit it home, that I had managed that situation, not perfectly, but as best as I could, was months, like years later, like a year and a half later, I was with someone and she said, we were talking about a hard situation. She goes, I just never will forget you telling me don't meet trouble halfway. And this is how I'm not doing that. And I just thought, oh my gosh, that's such a simple Suzanneism, if you will. But she held on to it. And it was really meaningful for me, because I do talk simple. I am a simple person. But the fact that I shared something that I really knew had to be stabilizing for the whole organization, that they still held on to it, was something that really made me feel like I was authentic, and I was really stabilizing and staying steady for the organization, which I think is critical.
Thank you so much for being here with us today. I appreciate your story, your optimism, your authenticity that you talked about. That is so, and one of my pet peeves, admittedly, is the word authentic. And many people, I was talking to another HR exec the other day, and we were saying how we hate that, actually, because people think authenticity means being, quote unquote, bringing themselves to work. And as people who deal with HR issues, we're like, that can get you a lot of trouble. So
Right.
is not necessarily just being whoever you want to be, but there is an authenticity, like you said, saying, hey, look, I'm going to work really, really hard, and I'm going to mess up, and I'm going to figure it out. Like, all that is absolutely authentic. I love how you bring that to the table. I know how you inspired so many people. So thank you so much for sharing that with us, your story, your advice, your Suzanneisms. And for everyone who's been listening, please, 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 take what she shared and share with one other person. I promise you, if you felt it land on your heart, I promise you it'll fall on someone else's heart as well. So as always, I encourage you, stay strong, stay positive, hit that like button, and stay moving. See ya. Thanks for listening to The Executive Appeal with Alex Tremble. I invite you to follow The Executive Appeal wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow me, your host, Alex Tremble, across all socials or via email for exclusive webinars, courses, and in speaking engagements on continued topics of executive leadership. So until next time, stay strong, stay positive, and definitely stay moving.